She found out a couple of years later that they weren't a married couple, they were brother and sister. People ask Reddit. What's the creepiest thing you've seen other families do? I was friends with this girl when I was 13, me and her were best friends and every Friday night I stayed over. I loved hanging out with her older sister and mom and considered them my family. Then my friend's bio dad got out of jail. He would beat up on my friend's mom constantly. When my friend would tell me, I was shocked that this was happening. Apparently, her mom and dad had been on and off since high school and it always would end with him going to jail on drug or domestic abuse charges. I never saw him hit her until one Friday night I heard glass shattering. She broke his favorite cup by accident. He went full on psycho. He was beating her, throwing her into walls, and finally trying to smash her face with a hammer. I ran to my friend's room and was about to dial 911 when my friend stopped me, telling me there was no point to call. Her mom would take him back and she'd be mad we got him in trouble. Actually, she was scared he'd kill her and her kids, but we didn't know that then. My friend was just on her phone while her mother was being beat with an inch of her life in the next room. I'm thankful that he stopped when he did, or else she would have died on the floor of her kitchen while her kids were watching a movie. He left after he was done hitting her. When I ran up to her, I was sobbing. I kept telling her how sorry I couldn't stop him and that I loved her like a mother. She just kind of looked at me and bawled. She finally called the police on him after that and they caught him drinking and driving, on top of domestic assault. He was sentenced 22 years without the possibility of parole. Had a friend named Ken in 4th grade. His family was messed up. His mom was in prison for trying to kill him and his little sisters by locking them in their house and setting it on fire. Ken saved his sisters' lives but was burnt on 90% of his body. He had masks, special sleeves for his legs and arms. It was horrible for him. Other kids were weirded out by him, but I thought it was so unfair how kids treated him because they didn't understand. Hell, my own stepmother had beat the shit out of me 100 times by that age. But what happened the one night I stayed over at Kent's house will forever be etched in my mind. It was a normal weekend night. We had a Super Nintendo, a large pizza, pogs, and a whole basement to ourselves. We eat, drink, play till we pass out. In the middle of the night, his little sister comes running down the basement steps crying hysterically and peed herself and is shaking, having a full-blown panic attack. Once I wake up and see Kent is not waking up, I realize upstairs sounds like a bowling alley or a bar fight. I can't get Rose to calm down and Kent won't wake up, so I go searching for an adult. Up the basement steps is the dining room, and as I open the door I see Kent's dad and his new wife covered in blood, cocaine, literally trying to kill each other. Neither really had clothes on, neither noticed me, and they were out to kill each other. What did I do? Turned around and went back downstairs and sat with his sister until she fell asleep. Woke up the next day and they acted like nothing happened. The house was cleaned up, both of them looked, well, better than the night before. Served the kids donuts like it was any normal Sunday morning. I told my dad every detail of the story when I got home and he looked sick when I was done. He went and told the story to several people who ended up finding out Kent's dad was a fairly big-time drug dealer and woman beater. Kent moved away shortly after that, and I've never heard a thing about him since. I still wonder to this day if him and his sisters are okay. And that's the story of the weirdest shit I ever saw another family do. Got plenty more stories, but that one bothers me most. Used to live next to a very strange family. There was a girl my age who used to peek through the curtains and watch me mow the lawn. I never saw anyone from the house outside except for rare occurrences and always at night. I didn't know how many people lived there, but the few that I saw were as pale as ghosts. They had a beautiful brick patio with a built-in fire pit built and only ever burned cardboard boxes and plastic. The patio was never maintained and got overgrown the same year it was put in. Only time I interacted with them was to repeatedly ask them not to burn plastic in their fire pit. They would wait for a nice cool night to burn their trash, and it was always when I had my windows open. Went to have dinner and stay over at an old ex of mine's, early 20s, who lives with her parents, really nice people, had a lovely dinner, went to hang in her room. Something went down and she left to go and talk with her parents who were mad at her about something. Hear a bunch of arguing and she comes back after a while crying. I can't remember what it was all about, but I think she'd done something wrong, so her dad apparently gave her a spanking as punishment. In her 20s. I was consoling her and stuff, but also freaking the duck out, very weird. If you want to support our new channel, please hit the like and subscribe button. We would also love to read some feedback in the comments. Thank you very much. I dated a girl Mandy in high school whose neighbors looked like an average middle-aged married couple. They didn't have kids but had 2 little dogs they treated like kids. Dressed them up, took them around town, talked to them like they were talking to a kid that understood, that kind of stuff. We just figured maybe they couldn't have kids, so no big deal, and kind of felt sorry for them. Other than that, they looked like a very loving married couple. Walked around with hands in each other's back pockets, always saying I love you, that sort of stuff. Years later I bumped into Mandy and we talked for a bit. At one point I brought up the neighbors and their dogs and she got real serious. She found out a couple years after high school that they weren't a married couple, they were brother and sister. I worked in a mental health unit and there was this guy, probably 18 or 19, who had a really weird relationship with his mother. Like both parents obviously had spoiled this kid rotten, but the mom/son relationship was especially weird. The mother literally sat in the middle of our day hall with her legs like wrapped around her son, who was sitting cross-legged in front of her giving him a massage. Both parents were super touchy with the kid, kissed each other on the lips. I don't think this one is super weird in all contexts, but in the middle of the psych ward it was weird. Hugging and touching constantly, just bizarre. There was a kid in my class, we were around 7 years old, and her parents routinely left her and her younger sister all alone at home while they went out on vacation. They would tell her stuff like, "Mommy and Daddy need a break from you too, okay sweetie?" When asked why they couldn't join their parents. It was such a common occurrence, and she would offhandedly mention that her parents weren't at home this weekend because they needed time away from her and her sibling. She was not only in charge of her sister, but she also cooked and stuff. It's sad because she definitely thought all of this was normal. I used to find it strange, but now looking back, it's just extremely upsetting. People like that shouldn't be parents. Starve their kids. My friend, who I'll call S, was stick thin, and her parents forced her into sports, classes, tutoring, etc. Sometimes she would come to school with only a smoothie and would say, "My mom says I'm not allowed to eat today." We were 12, and through all this she thought she was fat. I was shocked. Beyond that, they were controlling in her personal life as well. She turned out to be very secretive. No surprise there. Dad spending all the money on cars while his kids didn't get proper education, no proper clothing, their house didn't have a refrigerator, a television, no basic utilities. Down the block from me when I was around 10 was a family with 2 kids, a daughter my age and a brother a few years older. Once during a slumber party, they admitted they practiced kissing and more on each other, so they'd be good at it later, when they started dating. It was never clear just how far they went with each other. The parents were also a bit weird. Insisted serving us all giant heaping spoonfuls of vitamin powder, or else we weren't allowed to eat dinner, and putting milk on cereal would earn a grounding. Only apple juice was allowed, even though milk was otherwise consumed in normal ways in their house. Being grounded sometimes meant being locked in a dark room with the light bulbs removed. So there was this guy in my class called Lawrence. I was actually quite good friends with him, though he had a few mental disabilities such as ADHD, dyslexia, and maybe autism as well, I don't know. He always got in trouble, but he was generally a nice kid if you could get around his outbursts. He used to come round mine a lot, and because his family wasn't as well off as ours, his clothes were always dirty and unclean, but my mum would accidentally spill something and then give him some of my old clothes, as well as washing his clothes to ensure that he had at least some clean ones. No big deal. Well, one day I went round his house and it was fun. We played board games as they didn't have a TV and the house computer was bricked. Their house was also extremely messy, but I never mentioned it. However, I accidentally wandered into the wrong room after getting a drink of water, and saw Lawrence's mom, his dad and his older brother all having sex, also bearing in mind that his brother was only about 14 to 15 at that time, me and Lawrence were about 7 to 8, can't remember exactly. Then the brother saw that I had saw them as I locked eyes with him. I immediately went back to Lawrence, who looked none the wiser, and then I immediately got distracted and forgot to mention it to Lawrence. Then the older brother a couple hours after told me to not tell anyone, especially not Lawrence or my mom. Of course, I ended up telling my mom, and she ended up calling social services, and then went immediately into the care system, with the parents both sent to prison. I found out years later, after I found Lawrence's older brother on social media, that the parents had been sexually abusing the brother, and he apparently was cooperating with the parents so that they didn't sexually abuse Lawrence. It was after high school when I met him, but I knew a guy who had this type of relationship with his mom in his 20s. At a party at his house with mostly dudes, his mom was table dancing and taking her shirt off. She even gave a few of us a lap dance, including her son. WTF. It was so damn weird. He was egging her on the whole time. Then when we were giving him shot about it at work later, he was just like, what? She likes to have fun. I used to work evenings and get home around 10 to 11 p.m. I would drive by that home where the little kids were sitting in a circle listening to a man who seemed to be reading them the Bible. They were all very well dressed, jacket, white shirt, so it was really eerie. I don't have kids, but I know they should have been sleeping hours ago. Years later, the pastor got arrested for child abuse. Thank you for listening to another B-Town Reddit Stories episode. Hit the subscribe button and check out our channel for more stories. Let us know your opinion about this topic in the comments.